My name is Katherine McNenny, and I am one of the co-founders of Industrial District Green. We plant, take care of, and adopt trees in the eastern part of downtown Los Angeles. I'm going to be presenting a PowerPoint called The Importance of Trees in Disadvantaged Communities and explaining why shade is a luxury. Trees, a street-level perspective. Most people think about trees from this perspective, that is, street level. From street level, trees can be appreciated for their beauty, distinctive leaves, flowers, bark, smell, and shade, of course. According to a 2015 study in the journal Scientific Reports, people who live in neighborhoods with higher density of trees on their street report significantly higher health perception. Trees, a bird's eye perspective. To determine a community's resiliency against climate change, it's important to consider it from a bird's eye perspective. From this perspective, tree canopy coverage percentage can be determined. The 2015 study called Trees Grow on Money found a strong inverse relationship between tree canopy and Black and Hispanic populations in Los Angeles and Sacramento. Google bird's eye view. From this view, you can see clearly which communities have green and which ones don't. Going from left to right, the left picture is downtown LA and adjacent areas. So my cursor is circling most of downtown Los Angeles. Now it's tracing the Los Angeles River, which separates in downtown, that is, downtown from East LA. Going north, you can see Pasadena, very green, and Dodger Stadium is also north of downtown with Elysian Park surrounding it, also very green. The center picture, that is a part of Skid Row, which is some of the area that Industrial District Green plants trees in, and you can see that it is a lot of gray, a lot of concrete, a lot of asphalt, not very much green. And then the picture on the right is a screen grab of Pasadena, and you can see over there that it's very green, and there is a high percentage of tree canopy coverage, meaning you can see a lot of treetops. The CalEnviroScreen map. What is it? CalEnviroScreen is a mapping tool created by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and the California Environmental Protection Agency, CalEPA, to identify California's most environmentally burdened and vulnerable communities. The results are depicted so that different communities can be compared to one another. The darker the red color, the more environmentally burdened the community. So on the right of the screen, you can see this is what it looks like when you're zoomed all the way out. And anyone, it's public, anyone can log in to CalEnviroScreen, and it gets updated every couple years, and you can punch in your address, you can punch in any city in California, and you will see how it breaks down. You know, is it green? Is it red? Is it orange? Is it somewhere in between? So the darker the red color, the more environmentally burdened the community. CalEnviroScreen Map Scoring. Each census tract receives scores for up to 20 indicators. A census tract with a high score is one that experiences a higher pollution burden and vulnerability than census tracts with low scores. CalEnviroScreen ranks census tracts based on data that are available from state and federal government sources. Exposures, contact with pollution, environmental effects, adverse environmental conditions caused by pollution, sensitive populations, populations with biological traits that may magnify the effects of pollution exposures, community characteristics that result in increased vulnerability to pollution. So what does this all mean? All these bits of data are stacked together to create colors on this CalEnviroScreen map, and they all come into play. So disadvantaged communities that are more red or more orange might have populations that have higher health issues such as asthma, diabetes, congestive heart failure, and they may have less access to health care and less access to healthy foods. They may also suffer from more environmental pollutants and less tree canopy coverage. So these additional environmental burdens placed on an already sensitive population make that population even more burdened. This is a screenshot of most, not all, of the Los Angeles region, and you can see it, this map goes into great detail with each census tract getting a color. Along the coast, it's very green. Santa Monica, green. Redondo Beach, green. Palos Verdes, where my cursor is, the most green. Up in Malibu, very green. But then as you get over to central Los Angeles and into South Central, it gets progressively more red. And so where is downtown? Downtown is where my cursor is, just above the L of Los Angeles, and South Central is basically all red. This is a screen grab of a portion of the East Bay in Northern California. And you can see there's also quite a bit of disparity in communities that are right next to each other. So you can see Albany and Berkeley, Piedmont, very green. At least most of Berkeley is green, not all of it. But as you go south into Emeryville and as you go north into Richmond, you can see it gets progressively more orange, and then Richmond has some red zones. So this has to do with the socioeconomics of the community and also the environmental burdens. So there are pollutants in Richmond that are causing this area to turn red in this map. The connection between redlining and fewer trees. A 2020 study called The Effects of Historical Housing Policies on Resident Exposure to Intra-Urban Heat found that formerly redline neighborhoods were hotter than non-redline neighborhoods by nearly 13 degrees. One of the study's authors explained, the way cities are built often creates what is known as an urban heat island, meaning they tend to be hotter than their rural surroundings. Cities in general are hotter, but green space and concrete also aren't distributed evenly across an urban area. That can create micro heat islands within a city. Urban heat islands. NASA says heat islands are created when city growth alters the urban fabric by substituting man-made asphalt roads and tar roofs with other features for forest growth. Trees provide shade and cool the air through evaporation. The hard, dark surfaces like pavement store heat during the day, heat that is then released at night, keeping the city hotter for longer periods of time. And the picture here is of Atlanta, Georgia. And it's some kind of a thermal imaging showing the heat radiating off the urban city surfaces, which is kind of scary actually. Global warming and low-income LA. People living in low-income, disadvantaged communities across much of urban Los Angeles lack the means to cool their homes, posing a growing threat to their health and their lives from extreme heat waves due to global warming, a new USC research shows. Okay, so the chart on the left indicates that since 1961, the number of extreme heat days keeps growing. And we know from the CalEnviroScreen map and the data that it has that disadvantaged communities are the ones that are already burdened by pollution and less access to healthy foods, less access to health care, are going to suffer the most. I'll also say I am recording this on August 16th, 2020, and Los Angeles is in the middle of an extreme heat wave. I'm in downtown Los Angeles right now. It's rather unbearable to the point where I haven't even gone outside for the last couple days. Shade is a luxury. In a 2009 book titled Sidewalks, Conflict and Negotiation Over Public Space, the authors cite a study showing that household income is the only statistically significant variable in determining tree canopy. Sam Block writes in a 2019 article called Shade, which is an amazing article, and I recommend everyone interested in the subject, please do find that and read it. Shade is often understood as a luxury amenity, lending calm to courtyards and tree-lined boulevards, cooling and obscuring jewel boxes and glass cubes. But as deadly 100-degree heat waves become commonplace, we have to learn to see shade as a civic resource that is shared by all. In the shade, overheated bodies return to equilibrium. Blood circulation improves. People think clearly. They see better. In a physiological sense, they are themselves again. For people vulnerable to heat stress and exhaustion, outdoor workers, the elderly, the homeless, that can be the difference between life and death. A 2018 biology letter study found the ecological dynamics of cities are influenced not only by geophysical and biological factors, but also by aspects of human society. A pattern of higher biodiversity in affluent neighborhoods has been termed the luxury effect. The luxury effect has been found globally regarding plant diversity and canopy or vegetative cover. The image behind this text is of Central Avenue in downtown Los Angeles, and these are some of the trees that Industrial District Green has planted recently. And you can see, looking around the neighborhood, there are very, very few trees. There's a couple, but very few trees. And this area is also a shipping thoroughfare for trucks that are up and down this boulevard constantly, pushing out particulate matter. So this is a street that is very, very, very hot in the summertime, and hoping that these trees can help to cool it down. Shade is a civic resource. It's a civic resource, an index of inequality, and a requirement for public health. Shade should be a mandate for urban designers. Again, from Shade by Sam Block in Places Journal 2019. The picture on the left is Hancock Park, which is a very nice neighborhood in the middle of Los Angeles. And this is an image where you can see that the streets are completely shaded for anyone that happens to be passing through. And the trees look very well tended to. There are also large swaths of grass in the parkway. On the other hand, you can see the picture on the right is an image of Central Avenue in South LA with not a tree in sight. So that's quite a disparity, and these two places are probably less than 10 miles away, maybe 5 miles away. Another thing to keep in mind is that the infrastructure of the neighborhoods in California are different, and some allow for trees more than others. Telephone poles can be a huge hindrance to planting trees. They might not allow big trees to be planted under them because the tree branches would eventually be touching the wires and cause a fire hazard. So decades ago, all the telephone wires were put underground in Hancock Park to allow for the planting of these large trees, whereas in South LA, they're all still above ground. What are the benefits of urban trees? There are so many. This chart was put together by the Nature Conservancy. So going around the tree, the benefits. Filtering up to a third of fine particle pollutants within 300 yards of a tree. Cooling city streets by 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit, reducing deaths from heat and cutting energy use. But we just learned on another slide that there was a newer study that came out saying that some historically redline communities are actually 13 degrees hotter than neighboring shaded and wealthier and whiter communities. So 2 to 4 degrees is a low estimate. Reducing rates of cardiac disease, strokes, and asthma due to improved air quality. Protecting biodiversity, including habitat for migrating birds and pollinators. Reducing obesity levels by increasing physical activity, including walking and cycling. Managing stormwater, keeping pollutants out of waterways and reducing urban flooding. Increasing neighborhood property values. Reducing stress by helping interrupt thought patterns that lead to anxiety and depression. And these are just some of the benefits of urban trees, I should say. There are many, many more. Community-based greening. Locals are the experts of their own environment. Environmental groups do not have a history of inclusion. Seek out local organizations and ask what they want and how you can help them. California's Park Development and Community Revitalization Program's best practices includes the recommendation to help stabilize the housing of area residents before initiating any park construction to ensure that people are not displaced if improvements spark increased rents. And the image to the left is of a poster for a documentary I saw a few years ago that I was very impressed with, called City of Trees. And it really spoke to a lot of the feelings that I've had planting trees in Skid Row in particular. And I cringed at a lot of the scenes watching mostly a white workforce of environmentalists go into a predominantly black community without doing the necessary legwork of asking residents what they want and what they had planned and what their vision is for their own community. It was a great film though, and I would highly recommend it. You can see it's won a bunch of awards. So Van Jones says, City of Trees is honest, it is real, it explores the messy truths embedded in all fights for environmental and social justice. The film offers a window into the nuances, hopes, and fears that play out whenever well-intentioned people try to make things better in struggling urban communities. Takeaways. Communities that were redlined decades ago suffer lower tree canopy coverage today. The CalEnviroScreen Map allows anyone to explore which California communities are the most vulnerable and burdened by pollution. Higher tree canopy coverage equates to a healthier community. Shade is a luxury. Community-based greening prioritizes listening first, learning what is wanted, then working alongside neighbors in solidarity. So again, my name is Katherine, and it was a pleasure to be able to talk to you all about why trees are important in disadvantaged communities. Feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have questions about this presentation.